What you are about to hear is the interview nobody was prepared for. The interview that changed everything. The interview that has left Buckingham Palace scrambling and the entire royal world completely speechless. Hello, friends. My name is James, and you are watching Royal Daily Report, your #1 source for the most exclusive and most shocking royal stories on the internet. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now because tonight we are covering the most explosive royal moment of 2026. And if you have been with us from the beginning, you already know. We never hold back. We never pull back. Let us get into it. 3 days ago, Prince Harry sat down for an interview that nobody saw coming. Not the palace, not his advisors, not the journalists who cover this family every single day. Nobody. The interview was arranged in complete secrecy. No advance notice. No press release. No carefully managed rollout. Harry simply sat down in front of a camera in an undisclosed location and said everything he has been holding back for the past 2 years. And what he said, what he looked directly into that camera and said about his father, King Charles, has created a crisis inside Buckingham Palace the likes of which this institution has not seen since the darkest days of Diana. Our source inside the palace described the reaction when the interview aired as immediate and total. Phones ringing, doors slamming, senior advisors being pulled out of scheduled meetings, Charles himself being informed within minutes of the broadcast beginning. And the king, a man who has faced public controversy his entire life, a man who has been trained since birth to remain composed under pressure, reportedly had to leave the room, had to step away from the people around him and spend several minutes alone before he could speak. That is the impact of what Harry said. That is the weight of what one son said publicly about his father. And tonight on Royal Daily Report, we are telling you everything. The interview lasted 47 minutes. 47 minutes of Harry speaking without a script, without a publicist sitting beside him, without the careful management that has characterized every public statement he has made since leaving royal life. Just Harry, a chair, a camera, and 6 years of things he had decided he was no longer willing to keep quiet about. Our source, who has seen the full unedited version, says the first 20 minutes were relatively measured. Harry spoke about Invictus, about his children, about the life he and Meghan have built in California, the kind of content that his team would have approved without hesitation. But then something shifted. Around the 20-minute mark, Harry paused. A long pause. The kind of pause that people who know him say means something real is coming. And then he looked directly into the camera and said something that nobody in that room expected. Harry, I have spent 2 years trying to be diplomatic, trying to find the careful words, trying to protect people who I am not sure have ever fully extended me the same protection. And I have decided that I am done with careful. Not because I want to burn anything down. I burned enough things down already, and I carry that. But because my father is sick and the clock is running, and I refuse to spend whatever time we have left performing a piece that does not exist yet. So I am going to say some things tonight that my team will probably not thank me for. And I am going to say them because they are true. And because the truth, even when it is uncomfortable, is the only thing that has ever actually moved anything forward in my family. The interviewer, according to our source, did not say a single word. Just let Harry continue. And Harry continued. Harry, my father loves me. I want to say that first because everything else I am about to say exists inside that truth. He loves me. I have never doubted that. Not once. Not even in the worst moments of the past 6 years. What I have doubted, what I have struggled with, what has kept me awake at night in ways I am only now beginning to properly process, is whether my father has ever been able to choose me. Choose me over the institution. Choose me over the advice of the people around him. Choose me over the version of events that the palace finds most convenient. And the honest answer, the answer I have been too careful to say out loud until tonight, is that he has not. Not yet. And I need him to know that I see that. Not with anger. Not anymore. But with a clarity that I think can only come from being far enough away to see the whole picture. Our source says the production team in that room looked at each other when those words came out. Because this was not spare. This was not a carefully edited documentary. This was live, unfiltered, and it was not finished. Harry, there is a specific thing I need to address tonight. Something that happened recently that I have been asked not to talk about publicly. Something that involves my children, Archie and Lilibet. And I am going to address it because they cannot address it themselves. They are 6 and 4 years old. They are in California living their lives completely unaware that decisions are being made about their future in rooms they will never see by people they have never met. And I am their father, and it is my job to speak when they cannot. The interviewer asked gently, "What decisions are you referring to?" "Harry, I am referring to the fact that my children are being quietly and deliberately removed from the royal record. Not loudly, not publicly. The palace does not do things loudly. It does them quietly, and it lets time and silence do the rest. But I know what is happening. I have people I trust who have told me what is happening. And I am telling the world tonight so that the silence cannot do its work unopposed. My children are the grandchildren of a king. They carry the Windsor blood. They did nothing wrong. They made no choices. They gave no interviews. They signed no documents and refused no requests. They are children. And the idea that they should pay the price for decisions that adults made, decisions that I made, is something I cannot sit quietly with. I will not sit quietly with it." At this point, our source says the atmosphere in that room had completely changed. The interviewer leaned forward and asked the question that everyone watching was thinking. "Does King Charles know how you feel about this?" "Harry, my father knows exactly how I feel. We have spoken. Not enough. Never enough. But we have spoken. And I want to say something to him now directly. Because I think this is the only way it actually reaches him without being filtered through 10 layers of advisors and institutional caution. Dad, I am not your enemy. I have never been your enemy. I know it has not always felt that way. I know the book hurt you. I know the interviews hurt you. I know that Camilla, and I am not going to relitigate all of that tonight. I know that situation is complicated in ways that made everything harder. But I am your son, and I am asking you as your son, not as a duke, not as a former working royal, not as the person who wrote Spare, as your son, to not let my children disappear from our family's history while you are still here to prevent it. You have that power. You are the king. The institution serves you. You do not serve the institution. And if there is one thing I learned from watching you become king, one thing I watched you do that gave me genuine hope, it was the moments when you chose the human thing over the institutional thing. Choose the human thing now. For Archie. For Lilibet. Choose them. Our source says that when those words were broadcast, there were people watching in Buckingham Palace who were in tears. Not the senior advisors. Not the legal team. The staff. The people who have worked in those buildings for years and who remember Harry as a boy running through those corridors. Who remember him as the young prince who always had a smile for everyone regardless of rank. Who watched him grow up and watched him leave, and who have quietly missed him in ways they would never say publicly. Those people watched their screens, and they were in tears. Charles was not in tears, at least not where anyone could see him. But our source who was in the building that day says the king spent 4 hours that afternoon in his private rooms. Alone. No meetings. No scheduled appearances. No advisors. Just a father sitting with what his son had said to him on television in front of the entire world. And when Charles emerged from those rooms 4 hours later, he said one thing to the aide who was waiting outside the door. One thing that our source has passed on to us tonight, and that we are sharing with you now. Charles said, "Arrange a call. Just the two of us. Tonight." Whether that call happened, our source does not know. Whether Charles and Harry spoke that night, what was said, what was promised, what was left unsaid, we do not know. But a father who spent 6 years navigating this relationship through lawyers and advisors and carefully worded palace statements asked for a private phone call with his son the same night his son challenged him on television. And that tells you something. That tells you that underneath everything, underneath the institution and the lawyers and the letters patent and the succession rules and the advisors who counsel silence, there is still a father, and there is still a son, and there is still something between them that has not yet been fully broken. Meghan's response to the interview has been silence. Public silence. But sources close to the couple say that privately Meghan was aware the interview was happening and supported Harry's decision to do it. That she sat with him the night before and they talked for hours about whether this was the right moment, whether the right words could be found, whether the risk was worth taking. And that in the end it was Meghan who told Harry, "Say what is true. Everything else will follow from that. Say what is true." William has not responded publicly. His office released no statement. His team made no calls to the media. William's silence on this, our source says, is being interpreted inside the palace in 2 very different ways by 2 very different groups of people. One group says William's silence is disapproval. That the future king watched his brother challenge their father on television and is furious, and is expressing that fury the way Windsors express fury, by saying absolutely nothing. The other group says something more complicated. That William watched that interview and felt something shift in him. That hearing Harry say out loud the things that William himself has never been able to say, the things about choosing the human thing over the institutional thing, the things about their father's capacity to choose, that hearing those words spoken publicly by the brother he grew up with, the brother he has not properly spoken to in years, did something to William that nobody around him fully anticipated. Our source cannot say which interpretation is correct, but they say the palace is watching William very carefully right now, because William's next move, whatever it is, will tell everyone everything about where this family goes from here. The interview has now been watched by 40 million people across the world. 40 million people who heard a son speak to his sick father through a camera, because the normal channels between them are too blocked and too broken and too managed to carry the weight of what needs to be said. 40 million people who heard a father named directly and personally and lovingly, and with more honesty than the palace has ever been comfortable with. 40 million people who are now waiting, the way the world has been waiting for 6 years, to see if any of it makes a difference, to see if a phone call was made, to see if a grandfather finds a way to protect his grandchildren, to see if a father finds a way to choose his son. The clock is still ticking. Charles is still sick. Archie and Lilibet are still in California, not knowing any of this exists. And Harry, the boy who walked behind his mother's coffin at 12, the man who gave up a palace for a garden in California, the father who will not let his children be erased in silence, has said everything he had to say. Clearly, honestly, directly into the camera, directly to his father, in front of the whole world. Now it is Charles's turn. That is all for tonight, friends. I am James, and this has been Royal Daily Report. If this story hit different for you tonight, hit that like button right now. Subscribe if you have not already, and turn on those notifications because we are covering every single development in this story as it happens. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. I will see you in the next one. Until then, stay informed, stay curious, and stay royal. Goodbye, friends.